They said it was just a preseason game, but by the end of the night, the NFL was facing something far more dangerous than a loss on the field. It started with one decision. The Browns benched rookie quarterback Shedeur Sanders, arguably the most talked about player in football. Viewership didn't just drop, it evaporated. From millions of eyes glued to their screens just weeks before, to catastrophic lows that had network executives texting in disbelief. Are these numbers real? This can't be happening. In the hours that followed, fan loyalty turned into fury. Sponsors panicked. Inside league offices, emergency meetings were called. Roger Goodell reportedly canceled his weekend. And one furious executive summed it up like this: the Browns aren't just hurting themselves, they're putting the entire league in danger. But how did it spiral so fast? Is one rookie really worth this much power? And more importantly, what happens if the Browns don't fix it now? Because make no mistake, this isn't just about a quarterback. It's about control. It's about the future of football. And it all comes down to one simple truth. The NFL needs Sanders. And what happened when they benched him may have changed the league forever. Just 2 weeks before disaster struck, everything looked perfect. The Browns were riding a wave of preseason hype. A matchup against the Panthers pulled in 4.5 million viewers, massive for a meaningless August game. Sponsors were thrilled. The league was optimistic. Networks circled Cleveland matchups for primetime. And the main reason? One name: Sanders. Shedeur Sanders, the rookie phenom everyone was talking about, the future face of football, already selling out jerseys, dominating highlight reels, and pulling a younger, newer, global audience to the sport. He wasn't just a player, he was a magnet, which made what came next so unbelievable. Coach Kevin Stefanski benched him. The logic? Development. The reaction? An absolute ratings catastrophe. Instead of another multi-million viewer game, the Browns' matchup against the Eagles barely broke 200,000 viewers. Not a slight drop, not even a big dip, a massive nosedive. Inside CBS headquarters, executives stared at real-time dashboards in silence. One senior exec allegedly texted, "Is this a glitch?" It wasn't. The reality hit fast, and it hit hard. In the NFL, every ratings point is worth literal millions in advertising. Broadcasters began doing the math, and they didn't like what they saw. Within one night, Sanders' absence had created one of the worst collapses in preseason viewership history. And it wasn't just the networks taking the hit. Sponsors started pulling out of their show slots. Advertising partners questioned the viability of backing Browns games going forward. Internally, people weren't just shocked by what was happening. They were stunned no one saw it coming. Everyone thought they understood how things worked in the NFL. Turns out, they didn't understand just how big of a draw Sanders really was. And as the game unfolded, something beyond numbers started to break. The fans weren't just tuning out. They were preparing for war. The collapse didn't stop at the TV screen. It spilled into real life, fast. Inside First Energy Stadium, the energy shift was instant. Fans came expecting fireworks from Sanders. Instead, his name was missing from the starting lineup. And within minutes, the air was sucked out of the building. People didn't just grumble, they got up and left. Entire rows emptied before halftime. Parking lot attendants watched fans drive out mid-game. Security staff noticed something else. Concession lines were gone. Beer sales plummeted. Merchandise stands deserted. By the third quarter, Browns ownership had seen enough. Sources say owner Jimmy Haslam was glued to his phone in his private suite, responding to wave after wave of angry messages from corporate sponsors, league officials, and other NFL owners. Someone on that emergency conference call allegedly said, "We're watching the value of this franchise fall by the minute." But nothing prepared anyone for the storm coming next. Fans didn't just leave the stadium, they went online. Within 10 minutes of Sanders being officially benched, two hashtags exploded. Hashtag Free Shedeur and hashtag Boycott Browns. Millions of posts, tens of millions of impressions. Viral videos showed fans lighting jerseys on fire in the parking lot. Season ticket holders posted cancellation notices to their social feeds like they were protest flyers. Some fans even vowed to boycott the entire season unless Sanders started week 1. The team had triggered something they couldn't contain. Not a controversy, not even a scandal, but a nationwide fan revolt. The Browns became the most talked about team in football for all the wrong reasons. And at the center of it all, one decision, one benching, one rookie who wasn't even on the field. But for the league, this wasn't just a Cleveland crisis, because next, the business side of football started unraveling. By Sunday morning, this wasn't just an angry moment. It was a nationwide movement. Sports shows couldn't cover anything else. Every network led with the same headline: "The Browns benched Sanders and NFL fans are furious." Former players were livid. Stephen A. Smith went off on live TV, calling it the dumbest coaching decision of the decade. Skip Bayless laughed and said flatly, "You've just committed franchise malpractice." And while analysts debated whether this would cost Stefanski his job, the fans were already doing more than talking. They were organizing meetups to burn jerseys, mass cancellations of season tickets, local fan clubs releasing open letters, public ultimatums demanding Sanders start or else. On Reddit, user flare tags were changed to boycott mode. In real life, die-hard fans mailed back their torn-up tickets in protest envelopes. Entire Browns backers chapters, some decades old, started disbanding overnight. But the shockwave didn't stop in Cleveland. It shot through the entire football world. Because suddenly, everyone realized something terrifying. The fans had power, and they weren't afraid to use it. One viral post that garnered over 2.8 million views read simply, "No Shedeur, no viewers. It's that simple." And online wasn't the only place being hit. Inside the Browns facility, social media staff were instructed to freeze non-essential posts. Why? Every comment section had turned fully hostile. Every post ratioed. Every video flooded with chants of "let him play." The online revolt turned into a digital siege. And behind the scenes, executives at the NFL's highest levels were beginning to panic. Because this wasn't just isolated to one market, one player, or one preseason mistake. This was existential, a direct challenge to the league's control over how stars are managed, marketed, and monetized. And the next blow, it was going to cost the NFL millions. The NFL is a business before it's a sport. And when businesses bleed cash, alarms go off fast. By Monday morning, those alarms were deafening. Nike had reportedly built an entire rookie marketing series around Sanders. State Farm had shot commercial concepts featuring him as the centerpiece. Pepsi was preparing national-level tie-ins. All of it, millions in branding, ad spend, and packaging, depended on one assumption: that Shedeur Sanders would actually play. With him benched, that investment became worthless. Behind the scenes, marketing reps were furious. One insider from a top agency summed it up: "This isn't about wins or losses. This is about ROI. You don't bench your asset." And the avalanche kept growing. At DraftKings, prop bets tied specifically to Sanders were breaking rookie betting records. People were gambling on the Browns. They were gambling on him. Touchdowns, passing yards, fantasy points. And when he didn't take the field, volume tanked. The fantasy football world felt it too. Sanders had become the must-draft rookie in season-long leagues and DFS lineups. Then, suddenly, nothing. No points, no production, no reason to tune in. One major fantasy platform reported a 67% drop in Browns player selection the week after. Across the board, Sanders sitting wasn't just a disappointment. It was a catastrophic financial blunder. And league sponsors knew it. Internal sources say some of the NFL's biggest partners began making calls directly to Park Avenue, demanding answers. Contingency clauses were being reviewed. Fallback ad campaigns were pulled from shelves. This wasn't a PR fire anymore. It was a full-blown economic crisis. And the scariest part? All of it. Every lost dollar, every canceled bet, every dropped endorsement came down to one decision: bench Sanders. The league market's excitement. Sanders was the excitement. Even non-football brands had plans to tap into his mainstream magnetism. The NFL had in Sanders something it rarely gets: a player who could grow the pie. And then, he vanished from the screen. Fans overseas didn't understand the benching. European followers took to forums asking, if he's the best player, why isn't he playing? They weren't questioning the Browns. They were questioning the entire league system. And that's when panic reached the top. Executives realized the NFL's global expansion was, knowingly or not, being funneled through Sanders' aura. One preseason benching had turned into an international marketing meltdown. Meanwhile, back home, ticket sales cratered. Sponsors bailed. Stadium vendors scaled back operations. Entire Browns-driven campaigns were yanked overnight. And yet, inside the Cleveland facility, it was like no one truly grasped the stakes. Even non-football brands had plans to tap into his mainstream magnetism. The NFL had in Sanders something it rarely gets: a player who could grow the pie. And then he vanished from the screen. Fans overseas didn't understand the benching. European followers took to forums asking, if he's the best player, why isn't he playing? They weren't questioning the Browns. They were questioning the entire league system. And that's when panic reached the top. Executives realized the NFL's global expansion was, knowingly or not, being funneled through Sanders' aura. One preseason benching had turned into an international marketing meltdown. Meanwhile, back home, ticket sales cratered. Sponsors bailed. Stadium vendors scaled back operations. Entire Browns-driven campaigns were yanked overnight. And yet, inside the Cleveland facility, it was like no one truly grasped the stakes. Sources say the marketing team was told to keep promoting team culture. But culture doesn't sell jerseys. Culture doesn't make 15-year-olds in Germany care about Cleveland. Sanders did. The NFL didn't just miscalculate. They watch in real time as one decision rewrote their entire future. And the most jaw-dropping part? They knew this was possible. They saw the numbers. They felt the buzz. And they still let a coach bury a phenomenon under development. Next, players, coaches, staff. They didn't just disagree. They revolted. Behind the scenes, the Browns weren't just dealing with a fan revolt. They were facing an internal mutiny. Inside team meetings, tension cut like a knife. Veteran players, the ones who had backed Stefanski's meritocracy approach for years, started changing their tune. Because empty stadiums hurt everyone. Endorsement deals dry up. ... Primetime games disappear. And the locker room? It gets labeled radioactive. One veteran reportedly stood up in a private meeting and said, "I didn't sign here to play in front of ghosts." The message was clear. Stefanski wasn't just hurting Sanders. He was putting everyone else's careers in jeopardy. Meanwhile, ownership had enough. Jimmy Haslam allegedly summoned Stefanski and GM Andrew Berry for a sit-down described as explosive. Phrases reportedly used: organizational suicide, franchise defining the stake, and most directly, fix this immediately. But the damage was spreading. Assistant coaches were at odds. Some whispered that continuing to bench Sanders was like coaching back in 1995. Others hinted at philosophical divides tearing the staff apart. In one leaked conversation, an offensive assistant said, "We're playing chess while the NFL plays Netflix." Players weren't the only ones fuming. Staff, trainers, even marketing directors were angry. Why were they working overtime for preseason games that now meant nothing? Everyone felt it. The organization was teetering on the edge, not because of a mistake, but because of stubbornness. And at the eye of the storm, Stefanski, a coach clinging to process while the house burned around him. But there was one element nobody could control: Sanders' response. He stayed professional. No public outbursts, no social media jabs. But sources close to the QB say the frustration was building. Because when your own teammates, trainers, and assistants start turning on leadership, you know you're losing the locker room. And next, things escalated farther than anyone expected. What started in Cleveland was now threatening the entire NFL. Inside league headquarters, the mood turned from confusion to full-scale panic. Roger Goodell reportedly canceled weekend plans. Emergency sessions were booked with TV executives and marketing heads. The issue wasn't isolated anymore. Viewership wasn't just down, it was collapsing. And the scariest part? It had nothing to do with the Browns. Because whether you're a Bengals fan or a Packers fan or a die-hard Cowboys lifer, everyone cared about the Sanders story. And not just the player, the principle. If someone like Sanders could be benched despite hype, numbers, and fan demand, who's safe next? Executives across the league started asking hard questions no one wanted to hear. What if fans can now dictate lineups? What if loyalty shifts from teams to players? What if future stars walk? It wasn't just speculation. League partners knew this wasn't sustainable. Ratings curves forecasted 8-figure revenue losses if Sanders stayed on the bench. TV partners weren't quiet either. CBS executives reportedly warned the Browns directly, if he doesn't start week 1, we'll start invoking rating clauses. Translation? Start Sanders or pay millions in lost ad revenue. Amazon, NBC, ESPN, all watching, all angry, all nervous. Primetime broadcasts, fantasy apps, sportsbooks, and international media channels were built around Sanders' presence. Without him, the investments were crumbling. And yet, Stefanski wasn't budging. Fans protested. Sponsors pulled out. Players complained. Still, nothing changed. At one point, an internal report used a chilling phrase: "The Browns are holding the league hostage." Suddenly, the stability of the entire NFL ecosystem, from Vegas betting lines to German NFL broadcasts, rested on one rookie QB and a coach who wouldn't play him. Next, we dive deeper into who Sanders really is and why he's not just important, he might be irreplaceable. Let's be clear, this wasn't your average rookie buzz. Sanders wasn't just good, he was transformational. We're talking about a player whose jersey outsold entire rosters, whose social media engagement eclipsed whole franchises, whose presence alone changed TV schedules, press coverage, and stadium attendance. He wasn't just a quarterback, he was a cultural movement disguised in shoulder pads. Coaches preached development, but doctors said he was 100% healthy. Analysts broke down the tape. Perfect mechanics, elite velocity, top-tier reading ability. The Browns' own analytics staff reportedly had one early career projection: top 5 in efficiency out of the gate. Privately, players knew too. Receivers whispered that balls from Sanders just hit different. DBs said they had to adjust routes because of his anticipation. His own teammates were wearing his practice jersey like a badge of belief. But somehow, he still sat. The logic? Process, patience, but the numbers told a different story. Completion percentage? Greater than 70%. Yards per attempt? Among the highest in the league, preseason or regular. Expected points per dropback? Higher than most starters. Every line of data screamed elite potential. And the worst part? The league had been waiting for a star like this, a player with swagger, skill, and global magnetism. Sanders drew in audiences who didn't care about playbooks. They wanted moments. And he delivered those on and off the field. Executives from the NFL's European and Asian offices had already labeled him their global face of next-gen football. Ad agencies were begging for campaigns. Documentary crews were already editing highlight reels. But one voice, one coach, silenced it all. And because of that decision, a generational star was buried, right as football needed him most. Now the clock was running out. And inside the Browns facility, things were breaking down completely. Up next, the moment this internal war reached its breaking point. Inside the Browns facility, things had reached a boiling point. What started as friction between the coaching staff and ownership had now evolved into something far more dangerous, a full-blown civil war. According to insiders, a private meeting was held between team captains and leadership. The message? This isn't sustainable. Fix it, or we fall apart. Even assistant coaches, once loyal to Stefanski's vision, began questioning his grip on reality. One allegedly told a colleague, "We're marching into an ambush with a blindfold on." General manager Andrew Berry found himself trapped in the crossfire, caught between coaching autonomy and financial survival. Ownership applied pressure. Sponsors demanded action. Even former players joined in. Hall of Famers calling, texting, pleading, "Don't do this again. Don't repeat the factory of sadness history." The weight on Stefanski was enormous. Sources close to the situation described him as visibly exhausted. His press conferences were tight-lipped, robotic, defensive, and worse, more defiant than ever. Word spread of a heated exchange with Haslam in a closed-door meeting. Sources claimed Stefanski stood by his philosophy, even after being told ratings were collapsing, ticket sales were tanking, and national credibility was gone. And while the coach clung to principle, the team unraveled. Defensive players begged for offensive support. Marketing teams begged for storylines. Scouting departments raged that their evaluations were being thrown away. And then, the locker room fractured. Veterans stopped hiding frustration. Multiple players allegedly said they wouldn't stick around if this season imploded. Several even offered to trade starting spots just to get Sanders on the field. "We need to win," one player said, "and he's how we win." None of it mattered. The next game, the final preseason matchup, approached. But everyone knew this wasn't just about football anymore. This was war. And on the other end of it, a decision that would define the franchise forever. Saturday loomed like a doomsday clock. The preseason finale against the Chiefs wasn't just a game anymore. It was a tightrope walk over fire. One wrong step and the entire franchise falls in. TV networks circled it like vultures. Amazon, NBC, CBS, all preparing two separate production rundowns. One if Sanders started, and one if he didn't. Vegas refused to finalize betting lines until the Browns confirmed the starter. ESPN producers called it the most bizarre prep week in broadcast history. Inside team headquarters, everything was crumbling. The stadium operations team reported a 45% drop in expected attendance, unheard of for any home game. Parking companies slashed staffing. Vendors canceled food orders. Even cheerleaders reportedly questioned whether to perform at all. And then, the protests started. Fans organized empty seat movements. Footage circulated of viewers setting up viewing parties at rival bars, openly boycotting their own team in their own city. The humiliation was spreading like fire. NFL executives knew this was approaching a level never seen before. One broadcast executive reportedly told Browns management, "Play him, or we pull the plug." Meanwhile, Stefanski remains silent, a man drowning in denial. Ownership, cornered and furious, had two choices: wait and pray, or act. Rumors swirled of last-minute changes, emergency meetings with Sanders reps, potential overrides of Stefanski's game plan. even whispers of bench-clearing demands coming from the players themselves. Everything, ratings, revenue, credibility, was on the line. And Sanders, still professional, still working, still watching the storm unfold with quiet intensity. But those close to him say this: if he doesn't start this game, don't be surprised if he never puts on a Browns uniform again. This was no longer about the playbook. It was about pride, power, public pressure, a generational star on the edge of walking away. Saturday night was no longer about the Browns versus the Chiefs. It was Stefanski versus reality. And the loser wouldn't just lose a game. They'd lose everything. Saturday night arrived. The lights were on. The cameras were rolling. And across the country, from bars to basements to NFL headquarters, millions watched and waited. Not for the final score. Not for the drive charts or fantasy points. They were watching for one thing: Sanders. And the answer? That would decide everything. Because by now, this wasn't about football anymore. It was about a reckoning. For decades, the NFL sold a myth that the team comes first, that system matters more than stars. But reality just proved the opposite. You can't suppress electricity and expect the lights to stay on. You can't bench lightning and wonder why there's no storm. Sanders was the power source. He wasn't waiting for the NFL to catch up. He was the change. Fans had spoken. Sponsors had voted. Ratings had collapsed. Players had revolted. And still, one coach stood in the way. But in this new era of digital outrage, real-time analytics, and global reach, nostalgia doesn't win. Data wins. Eyeballs win. Excitement wins. And Sanders? He checked every box. Star power, market magnetism, global visibility. He was the blueprint for what the NFL claimed to want, until someone like Stefanski gave them a reason to blow it all up. If Sanders played that night, the storm could pass. If he didn't, it wouldn't just be the Browns that paid the price. It would be the entire league. Cleveland was no longer the center of this controversy. It became the symbol of outdated thinking versus undeniable talent, of business versus ego, of an entire industry standing at a crossroads. And as kickoff hit, one truth hovered like thunder over First Energy Stadium: play Sanders or brace for annihilation. Because this wasn't just about a quarterback, it was about the future of football. And if you dare bench that, you don't just lose a game, you lose an era.